Okay, let's talk about Craig Gillespie's new film, Dumb Money, starring Paul Dano as Keith Gill, aka Roaring Kitty, who is the gentleman who began to champion GameStop back in 2020 and 2021 and took on the Wall Street hedge funds as he and the Redditors of Wall Street Bets began purchasing stock for GameStop, and it became this huge story. It's really no surprise to see that Hollywood wanted to tell this story because, on its face, it is a very compelling story. It's David versus Goliath. It's interesting that Robinhood is an app that allowed much of this to happen. And there are elements of the Robin Hood story that, as the story unfolds, there is some fascinating irony there. So, this film had a lot of potential, and many critics are really enjoying this movie. Unfortunately, I am not one of them. I am a little mixed on this film. And I think my biggest problem simply comes down to how uninspired it is. This will inevitably be compared to The Big Short from 2015, which for my money was one of the best movies of that year. I love The Big Short. I think it's great. I do think that Hollywood has a problem, though, as it always has since its inception, that when something is successful, they try to regurgitate that formula. And we've seen several films over the last few years try to recapture the magic of The Big Short with its style and energy, this being among them. And most of those films, if not all of them, have failed in one way or another. And I do think that this film is a little bit uninspired energetically, stylistically. It is going for The Big Short in that way. Maybe more importantly, though, and I do think a lot of biopics, a lot of films based off of real life events fall victim to this, where it simply becomes a film version of a Wikipedia page. And that is really, I think, the biggest issue with Dumb Money, because all of the story's most important beats are told to us. We don't really see how this story unfolds. We don't see it. We are told about these events through montage. That to me is a little deflating. It certainly comes off as if the film doesn't trust the audience. And as a result, not only is the story a little unattainable, it renders these characters empty shells because the film just refuses to examine the how and why behind this movement. We do see a couple of scenes of Keith doing his YouTube videos and how he might have been a unique personality, but in terms of how he galvanized the YouTube community, how he galvanized a Reddit page in Wall Street Bets, there are supporting characters here that are a part of that community, and we see them respond to Keith, but the how and the why, the true emotions of what these characters felt and why they would have felt propelled to follow Keith, I think that is pretty hollow in this film. I think it's very superficial, and we don't really get into the nuances of these characters in any sort of way. And I think because of how the film wants to utilize montage, how it wants to show us some of these supporting characters, you then interject that with the Vincent D'Onofrio, Nick Offerman, and Seth Rogen characters who are our antagonists, players that are among the Wall Street hedge funds. And they simply become one note villains here. And given what we know about them in real life, maybe there's some credence to that. But dramatically speaking, they are simply here to show us the other side of the coin, that they lost $1 billion. That's it. There's really nothing to them. Satirically, comedically, maybe there's some levity to be had there, but dramatically speaking, I don't think they offer too much. I will say, though, speaking of the comedy here, The humor of this film, I do think, is very effective. Pete Davidson is really great, very funny. Love his comedic timing, and even the almost satirical bite this film has toward Wall Street and these hedge funds is really good. I will certainly give the film credit for that. I did laugh quite a bit throughout the film. I just wish that the drama and the heart of this story was there to counteract that humor, or to complement rather. So unfortunately, I ended up having a mixed reaction to this. I just don't think the beating heart of this story and what makes it so compelling as the underdog fighting the huge giant, if you will, the David versus Goliath, that was missing. And that is what the story is supposed to be about. And I just don't feel like it's there at all. And if and whatever is there in terms of representing that, it is very hollow, very superficial, and most of what is important about the story is told to us. We just don't see it. We don't see it unfold. We don't see the emotions. We don't see the galvanizing. It is told through these banal montages. This film doesn't seem to understand social media or Reddit or TikTok and why those things were important to this story. And unfortunately, it just didn't really work for me the way this film tried to go about it. I am mixed on it. This film has been a little polarizing, though. You might have a different take. You might have enjoyed this more than me, and I'd be happy to hear the thoughts in the comments below. We'll have a podcast review of this coming soon as well, where we'll dig into this more. We'll have a written review up at endsessionfilm.com as well. Until then, I think I'm just going to go watch The Big Short again, because that is a much better movie.